Most people believe their emotions are reactions to life, but in reality, emotions are signals, fast, ancient signals designed to protect, not to lead. When you allow those signals to take control, you surrender strategy for speed and clarity for comfort. Emotional reactions feel powerful because they are immediate, but immediacy is not intelligence. The human nervous system evolved to survive danger, not to build long-term outcomes. That's why your body reacts before your mind has time to think. A raised voice, a dismissive look, a moment of disrespect, your pulse spikes, your jaw tightens, and your mind rushes to defend. This is not weakness, it is biology. But leadership over your life begins when you understand that what is natural is not always what is effective. Strategy requires delay, observation, and restraint. Emotional reaction gives temporary relief but permanent consequences. The moment you react impulsively, you hand control to the external world. True power begins when you interrupt that reflex and decide, not feel, your next move. Every emotional trigger has a history. No reaction is random. The things that provoke you today were programmed yesterday, often long before you were conscious of them. Triggers are unresolved patterns, not present threats. When someone challenges your worth, ignores your effort, or disrespects your boundaries, the pain you feel is rarely about that moment alone. It echoes past experiences where you felt unseen, powerless, or dismissed. The mind doesn't distinguish between old danger and new discomfort. It only recognizes familiarity. That's why you can feel rage in a situation that doesn't deserve it or fear where no real threat exists. Emotional intelligence begins with curiosity, not judgment. Instead of asking, "Why did they do this to me?" ask, "Why did this affect me so strongly?" That question shifts your attention inward, where control actually lives. You cannot master what you refuse to examine. Strategy begins with awareness of your internal landscape. Impulsive reactions often disguise themselves as honesty or strength. People say, "I'm just being real," or "I don't tolerate disrespect." But what they're often doing is allowing emotion to justify behavior. True strength is not loud. It does not rush to defend itself. It does not need immediate validation. The most disciplined individuals feel the same emotions everyone else does, but they do not act on them in the same way. They pause. That pause is not hesitation. It is calculation. It is the space where intelligence overrides instinct. When you respond instead of react, you choose outcomes over impulses. You stop performing for the moment and start investing in the future. Emotional reactions may feel like control, but they are actually surrender. Surrender to triggers, to other people's behavior, to circumstances you cannot command. Strategic movement begins when you accept that not every feeling deserves expression and not every thought deserves action. Your emotions are information, not instructions. Anger tells you a boundary may be crossed. Fear tells you something matters. Sadness tells you something needs processing. But none of these emotions tell you how to act wisely. The mistake most people make is assuming intensity equals truth. The louder the emotion, the more they believe it must be followed. But intensity only means the nervous system is activated, not that the response will be useful. Strategic individuals treat emotions like data points. They acknowledge them, study them, and then decide what serves their long-term objective. This requires humility, the humility to accept that your first instinct may be wrong. Discipline is not suppression, it is direction. You are not denying what you feel, you are choosing where it leads. The ability to sit with discomfort without acting is one of the rarest and most valuable skills you can develop. It separates those who are controlled by life from those who command it. The environment constantly tests your self-mastery. Social pressure, comparison, rejection, and provocation are everywhere. Some people will intentionally push your buttons because they sense emotional volatility. Others will do it unconsciously, simply acting from their own unresolved patterns. Either way, reacting emotionally makes you predictable. Predictability is weakness in any strategic context. When others can anticipate your reactions, they can manipulate outcomes. Calm disrupts expectation. Silence confuses provocation. Restraint shifts power. This is why emotionally intelligent individuals often appear unbothered, not because they don't feel, but because they refuse to advertise their internal state. They understand that privacy of emotion is protection. When you stop broadcasting your triggers, you stop giving others access to your nervous system. Strategy thrives in ambiguity. The less reactive you are, the more leverage you possess. Most regret is born from moments where emotion outran wisdom. Words spoken too quickly, decisions made under pressure, relationships damaged by pride. These are not failures of intention, but failures of regulation. Emotional regulation is not about becoming cold or detached. It's about becoming accurate. Accuracy requires slowing down your internal response long enough to see the full picture. When you act emotionally, you see only what hurts you. When you act strategically, you see consequences, patterns, and timing. Timing is everything. The right move at the wrong time is still the wrong move. Strategic individuals are patient not because they lack desire, but because they understand sequencing. They know when to advance, when to wait, and when to withdraw. Emotional people move to feel better now. Strategic people move to live better later. That difference shapes entire lives. You must also understand that emotional reactions often protect the ego, not the self. The ego wants to be right, respected, and admired immediately. The self wants stability, growth, and long-term peace. When you react defensively, you are usually defending an image, not a value. Strategy requires choosing values over validation. This means allowing misunderstandings to exist temporarily, allowing others to underestimate you, allowing silence to do work that words cannot. This is uncomfortable for the ego, but nourishing for the self. Emotional maturity is the willingness to be misunderstood in the short term to be aligned in the long term. You do not need to attend every argument you are invited to. You do not need to prove yourself in every room. Power is conserved energy. Every emotional reaction costs you focus, clarity, and momentum. Strategic calm preserves them. To move with strategy, you must first accept responsibility for your inner world. No one makes you react. They reveal what you have not yet mastered. This is not blame. It is ownership. Ownership is freedom. When you stop outsourcing your emotional control to circumstances and people, you reclaim authority over your life. The goal is not emotional numbness. It is emotional literacy. Learn the language of your triggers. Learn how your body signals impatience, anger, or fear. Learn how quickly your thoughts escalate under stress. This awareness creates choice, and choice is the foundation of strategy. From here, everything changes. Not because the world becomes calmer, but because you do. When you stop letting emotion drive the vehicle, you can finally decide where you're going. When you're ready, we'll continue, moving deeper into psychological control, patience, and the discipline required to hold your power without force. The moment you recognize that awareness creates choice, you step into a different relationship with yourself. Control is not about domination, it is about alignment. Psychological control begins where urgency ends. Most people rush because their emotions demand immediate resolution, but patience is not passive. It is active restraint. It is the decision to delay gratification in favor of clarity. When you slow your response, you give your rational mind time to come online, allowing logic, memory, and foresight to balance emotion. This is not something you are born with. It is trained. Just as muscles grow under resistance, psychological control develops under moments where you want to react, but choose not to. Each pause strengthens your capacity to lead yourself. Over time, what once felt like suppression becomes second nature. You stop feeling the need to prove, correct, or defend in real time. Calm becomes your baseline, not because life is easier, but because you are steadier. Patience is often misunderstood as weakness or indecision, but in reality, it is strategic dominance over time. Impulsive people borrow confidence from speed. Patient people build confidence from certainty. When you rush, you rely on instinct. When you wait, you rely on intelligence. The patient mind observes patterns that the emotional mind misses. It notices tone shifts, inconsistencies, timing, and intention. This awareness allows you to act precisely rather than dramatically. Strategy is about leverage, and leverage comes from information. Emotion clouds perception, patience sharpens it. This is why those who remain calm under pressure often control the outcome without appearing to do much at all. They are not inactive, they are collecting data. They understand that silence can be more revealing than confrontation, and that restraint often invites others to expose themselves. Patience is not the absence of action, it is the discipline of choosing the right one. To develop psychological control, you must train your nervous system, not just your mindset. Many people try to think their way out of emotional reactions, but emotion lives in the body before it reaches the mind. Your breath shortens, your shoulders tense, your heart accelerates. If you ignore these signals, your body will decide for you. Control begins with regulation. Slow breathing, grounded posture, and intentional pauses are not soft practices. They are tactical tools. When you regulate your physiology, you reduce emotional intensity, giving your mind room to operate. This is why seasoned professionals in high-stress environments focus on breathing and composure first. They know that a regulated body produces a regulated mind. Mastery is built from the inside out. You cannot command the external world if you cannot command your internal state. Another critical element of psychological control is detachment, not apathy, but perspective. Detachment allows you to step back from a situation emotionally without disengaging intellectually. You remain present, but you are not consumed. This distance prevents over-identification with outcomes. When you attach your self-worth to every interaction, every disagreement feels like a threat. Detachment reminds you that one moment does not define you, and one person's behavior does not determine your value. From this stance, you can choose responses based on principle rather than emotion. Detachment is what allows leaders to make difficult decisions without becoming cruel and compassionate decisions without becoming weak. It is the balance point between empathy and authority. You care, but you are not controlled by caring. Discipline is the structure that holds psychological control in place. Without discipline, insight fades under pressure. Discipline is choosing consistency over mood. It is deciding in advance how you will behave, regardless of how you feel in the moment. This is where standards matter. If you have no internal standards, you will default to emotional convenience. Strategic individuals set non-negotiables for their behavior. They decide what they will not say, how they will not react, and what they will not tolerate from themselves. This internal code acts as an anchor when emotions rise. You no longer need to decide how to behave in the heat of the moment. You already know. Discipline reduces decision fatigue and increases reliability, both internally and externally. People trust those who are consistent. More importantly, you begin to trust yourself. Patience also reshapes how you experience time. Emotional reactions collapse time into the present moment, making everything feel urgent and absolute. Strategy expands time, allowing you to consider future consequences alongside present feelings. When you widen your time horizon, many things lose their power over you. A comment that once felt intolerable becomes insignificant when viewed against your long-term goals. A delay that once triggered frustration becomes an opportunity for refinement. This temporal awareness is a hallmark of maturity. Children react to now. Adults plan for later. Strategic adults plan for much later. They are willing to endure temporary discomfort for lasting stability. This is not denial, it is prioritization. You begin to ask not, how do I feel about this? But, where does this lead? Psychological control also requires confronting your need for control over others. Many emotional reactions stem from the frustration of unmet expectations. You expect people to behave logically, fairly, or kindly, and when they don't, you react. Strategy begins when you accept that you cannot control others, only your response to them. This acceptance is not resignation, it is liberation. When you stop trying to manage people's behavior, you redirect energy toward managing your own actions. You anticipate instead of expecting. You prepare instead of hoping. This shift reduces disappointment and increases effectiveness. You no longer waste energy wishing people were different. You adjust your strategy based on who they consistently show themselves to be. Emotional people argue with reality. Strategic people adapt to it. Another layer of patience is learning to delay expression. Just because you understand something doesn't mean you must immediately say it. Just because you see the truth doesn't mean it will be received. Timing determines impact. Speaking too early can sabotage understanding. Holding back allows context to form. Strategic silence is not avoidance, it is intentional restraint. It creates space for others to think, reflect, or reveal more. Many conflicts escalate not because of disagreement, but because of premature expression. When you wait, you gain leverage. You allow emotion, yours and theirs, to settle. When words are finally exchanged, they land with clarity instead of force. This is how calm authority is built, not through volume, but through precision. Self-mastery also involves redefining what winning looks like. Emotional minds equate winning with being right, being heard, or having the last word. Strategic minds define winning as maintaining alignment with their values and objectives. Sometimes the most strategic win is disengagement. Sometimes it is allowing others to believe they have won while you preserve your position. This requires confidence that does not depend on external affirmation. When you no longer need immediate validation, you gain freedom of movement. You can choose long-term positioning over short-term satisfaction. This is particularly powerful in environments where egos collide. The calmest person often controls the pace, the tone, and ultimately the outcome. As psychological control strengthens, you begin to notice a shift in how others respond to you. People become more measured around you. Provocation decreases. Respect increases. This is not because you are intimidating, but because you are unpredictable in the best way. You no longer react on cue. Your responses are thoughtful, sometimes delayed, always intentional. This forces others to adjust. Emotional volatility invites chaos. Emotional stability commands order. Over time, you develop a reputation, not for dominance, but for composure. That reputation becomes a form of influence. People listen differently to those who do not rush to speak and who do not flinch under pressure. Calm communicates confidence without announcement. Ultimately, psychological control and patience are not about perfection. They are about progress. You will still feel emotions. You will still experience moments of irritation, disappointment, and anger. The difference is what you do next. Each time you pause instead of react, you reinforce a new pattern. Each time you choose restraint, you reclaim energy that would have been wasted. This accumulation compounds. Self-mastery is built quietly, decision by decision, moment by moment. And as it builds, you realize that calm is not something you wait for. It is something you generate. From this place, strategy becomes natural, not forced. You are no longer fighting yourself. You are leading yourself. When you're ready, we'll move forward into applying this strategic calm in relationships, communication, and the decisions that shape the direction of your life. When strategic calm becomes your default, relationships begin to transform, not because others change, but because your responses do. Most conflict is fueled by emotional escalation. One reaction invites another, and soon the original issue is buried under tone, ego, and resentment. When you remain calm, you interrupt this cycle. You become the stabilizing force in the interaction. This does not mean you tolerate disrespect or abandon boundaries. It means you enforce them without emotional chaos. Strategic calm allows you to address issues directly, without aggression or defensiveness. Your words become clearer because they are not rushed by feeling. People may not always like what you say, but they will understand it. Calm communication carries authority because it signals self-trust. You are not asking to be heard, you expect to be. In relationships, emotional control is often mistaken for emotional distance. In truth, it allows for deeper connection. When you are not overwhelmed by your own reactions, you can listen fully. You can hear what is being said beneath the words. This level of presence builds trust. People feel safer around those who do not explode, withdraw, or manipulate through emotion. Strategic calm creates emotional reliability. It shows that you can handle discomfort without making it everyone else's problem. This does not mean you suppress truth. It means you deliver it with precision. Timing, tone, and intention matter. A regulated response invites dialogue. An emotional reaction invites defense. If your goal is resolution rather than release, calm becomes your greatest asset. Communication guided by strategy is intentional, not impulsive. You choose words that serve the outcome, not the moment. You ask questions instead of making accusations. You state observations instead of assumptions. This approach shifts conversations from confrontation to clarity. Emotional communication seeks relief. Strategic communication seeks understanding. When you speak from calm, you reduce misunderstanding because your message is not distorted by intensity. You also leave room for silence. Silence allows others to process and respond honestly. It prevents conversations from becoming performances. Strategic communicators understand that not every gap needs to be filled. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is pause and let the weight of what was said settle. In difficult relationships, strategic calm becomes a filter. You stop trying to change people and start evaluating patterns. You observe consistency rather than promises. You respond based on behavior, not potential. Emotional attachment often keeps people locked in cycles of hope and disappointment. Strategy introduces reality. It allows you to make decisions grounded in evidence rather than emotion. This may mean creating distance, adjusting expectations, or redefining boundaries. These choices are not made in anger or fear, but in clarity. Calm allows you to exit dynamics that drain you without creating unnecessary conflict. You move quietly, decisively, and without regret because your decision was not reactive, it was considered. When it comes to life decisions, emotional regulation is the difference between impulse and intention. Big choices made under emotional pressure often lead to long-term consequences that don't align with your values. Strategy requires you to separate urgency from importance. Just because something feels pressing does not mean it deserves immediate action. Calm creates space to assess risk, timing, and alignment. It allows you to ask better questions. Does this serve my long-term direction? Am I acting out of fear, pride, or pressure? Strategic decision-making is not about eliminating emotion, but about ensuring emotion does not dominate the process. You listen to how you feel, then you verify with logic, experience, and foresight. Strategic calm also reshapes how you handle setbacks. Emotional reactions to failure often involve self-criticism, blame, or withdrawal. Calm reframes failure as information. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" you ask, "What does this teach me?" This shift preserves momentum. You recover faster because you do not waste energy on internal conflict. Calm allows resilience to replace rumination. You adapt, adjust, and continue. Over time, this builds confidence, not the fragile kind dependent on success, but the stable kind rooted in self-trust. You know you can handle challenges without losing yourself. That knowledge becomes an internal anchor in uncertain times. As you move through the world with strategy, you begin to recognize when not to act. Not every opportunity is aligned. Not every battle is worth engaging. Emotional minds chase stimulation. Strategic minds protect direction. You learn to say no without guilt and yes without hesitation. Your choices become cleaner because they are guided by clarity rather than impulse. This selectivity conserves energy and sharpens focus. You stop scattering yourself across too many directions and begin investing deeply in what matters. Calm simplifies. It cuts through noise and reveals priority. In this state, your actions carry more weight because they are fewer and more intentional. Strategic calm also changes how you experience power. Power is no longer something you assert, it is something you embody. You do not need to dominate conversations or control outcomes to feel secure. Your presence speaks before you do. People sense when someone is not easily shaken. This composure creates influence without force. You lead by example, not explanation. Others may not consciously understand why they respect your authority, but they feel it. It comes from consistency, restraint, and clarity. This is the quiet confidence of someone who knows themselves and does not need external validation to stay steady. Ultimately, moving with strategy instead of emotion is an act of self-respect. It is the decision to treat your life as something worth planning, not reacting through. You stop living at the mercy of moods and start living by design. This does not make you rigid, it makes you resilient. You can adapt without unraveling, engage without losing yourself, and decide without regret. Calm becomes your advantage in a reactive world. While others are pulled by every provocation, you remain grounded in purpose. You are not faster, but you are accurate, and accuracy, over time, always wins. When you move with strategy, you no longer ask life to be easier. You ask yourself to be stronger, clearer, and more disciplined. Emotion becomes a tool, not a tyrant. Patience becomes your posture, and self-mastery becomes the quiet force guiding every step you take forward.